The Trans-Canada Airlines cargo plane touches down in Montreal at 10:43 p.m. The manifest says 10 boxes. The cargo hold has 4. Nobody panics. Nobody calls police. The airline assumes it's a paperwork error. That assumption gave the thieves 12 hours to disappear. September 24, 1952. 6 wooden crates containing 848 pounds of industrial gold bullion vanished from Malton Airport near Toronto, worth $215,000 Canadian, over $2 million in today's currency. No violence, no break-in, no witnesses. 73 years later, the gold has never been found. Neither have the thieves. Malton Airport in 1952 sat on the western edge of Toronto, surrounded by farmland and small industrial operations, handling both passenger traffic and the growing business of air freight across Canada's vast geography. The war had ended 7 years earlier, and commercial aviation was experiencing explosive growth. Ex-military DC-3 aircraft now hauling mail, cargo, and passengers on routes that would have taken days by train. Canada's mining industry moved gold the same way it moved everything else through the air freight system. Paperwork, manifests, and the assumption that locked cages and signed receipts constituted security. Trans-Canada Airlines, the government-owned carrier that would later become Air Canada, operated the country's primary cargo routes, moving regular shipments of gold from mines to refineries to vaults without incident. Wednesday, September 24th, began as unremarkable weather. Clear skies, temperatures in the mid-60s Fahrenheit, the kind of evening that made cargo operations smooth and predictable. At 4:45 p.m., a Brinks armored car pulled through the airport gates carrying 10 reinforced wooden boxes, each measuring roughly 18 inches by 12 inches by 10 inches, the standardized dimensions for gold transport. Each crate weighed 88 pounds. Dense, awkward to carry, impossible to move quickly without equipment or multiple people working in coordination. The Brinks guards watched as Trans-Canada Airlines cargo workers unloaded the boxes, matching each one against the manifest, signing receipts, maintaining the paper trail that theoretically prevented exactly what was about to happen. Air Express official Denai Mann signed for the shipment at 4:46 p.m., recorded the transaction, and supervised as the 10 boxes were wheeled into an 8-foot steel cage inside the express shed, a temporary but supposedly secure holding area. Mann locked the cage door, confirmed the padlock was secure, and went home for dinner, his part of the process complete. The gold now the airline's responsibility until departure time 3 hours later. This is where the system revealed its fundamental vulnerability. Between 4:46 p.m., when Mann locked the cage, and 8:03 p.m., when the shipment moved to the aircraft, the gold sat in what was effectively a warehouse with minimal oversight. Malton's layout in 1952 placed cargo facilities near the runway perimeter, accessible by service roads that connected directly to public highways. No security checkpoints, no guards stationed at the express shed, just locked doors and the honor system. The assumption was deterrence through weight and inconvenience. Who would attempt to steal something that required a truck, multiple people, and generated enormous risk for what amounted to industrial commodities that couldn't easily be fenced? More critically, there was no system to verify cargo once it entered the cage. No count at loading time, no physical inspection before the aircraft departed. Just trust that what went into the cage would come out of the cage. At 8:03 p.m., cargo handler Howard Halpenny, 22 years old, arrived at the express shed with his truck to transport the gold shipment to the waiting aircraft. The TCA cargo plane scheduled for Montreal was preparing for an 8:33 p.m. departure. Halpenny unlocked the cage, loaded what he believed were the gold crates onto his truck, then left the vehicle unattended for several minutes while he walked to another part of the facility to collect the mail pouches for the same flight. This is the window. 3 to 5 minutes, possibly less, when 528 pounds of gold sat in an unattended truck on an active airfield with direct access to perimeter roads. When Halpenny returned with the mail pouches, he glanced into the cargo area, saw crates that appeared correct, and drove the truck to the aircraft. He didn't count the boxes, didn't verify the weight, didn't question whether what was there matched what should have been there. The cargo was transferred from truck to aircraft, loaded into the DC-3's hold, secured for the flight, ground crew working efficiently through their checklist, unaware that 6 of the 10 boxes they were supposed to be loading were no longer on the truck. The Trans-Canada Airlines cargo flight departed Malton at 8:33 p.m., carrying 4 boxes of gold toward Montreal, leaving behind a locked empty cage, a signed manifest claiming 10 boxes, and no indication anything had gone wrong. For 2 hours and 10 minutes, the aircraft flew northeast through clear evening skies, following the established air corridor between Toronto and Montreal, while 600 miles behind it, whoever had taken the gold was driving away from Malton with a 12-hour head start. The aircraft touched down at Montreal's Dorval Airport at 10:43 p.m. Ground crew began unloading cargo, matching items against the manifest, preparing to transfer everything to its final destinations. The manifest showed 10 boxes of gold bullion inbound from Malton. The cargo hold contained 4. Someone counted again. Still 4. The initial assumption was the most logical: clerical error, boxes loaded on wrong aircraft, items left behind at Malton by mistake, anything except theft, because theft of this scale from a locked cage at an operating airport seemed impossible. Montreal cargo staff spent the next hour searching their own facilities, checking whether the boxes had been misrouted to a different area, confirming with Malton that yes, all 10 boxes had been loaded, except they hadn't been. By midnight, someone at Trans-Canada Airlines contacted the airline's internal security, who began asking questions that should have been asked 8 hours earlier. Where exactly were the boxes between 4:46 p.m. and 8:33 p.m., and who had access? Trans-Canada Airlines didn't contact the Royal Canadian Mounted Police until late the following morning, nearly 15 hours after the cargo arrived incomplete in Montreal. The delay reflected the airline's continued belief this was internal error, rather than criminal theft. Once theft was confirmed, jurisdiction became immediately complicated. The RCMP, Ontario Provincial Police, Toronto Township Police, and Canadian National Express investigators all converged on Malton, each with overlapping authority and competing theories. The express shed where the gold had been stored overnight showed no signs of forced entry. The padlock on the cage was intact, the door had been properly locked, nothing appeared disturbed except for the absent 600 pounds of gold. Investigators faced an immediate logical problem. Whoever took the gold either had keys to the cage, or the gold never entered the cage in the first place, or it was removed during the narrow window when Halpenny's truck sat unattended. Howard Halpenny became the natural focal point of the investigation. He was the last person known to have handled the cargo. He left the truck unattended, and he failed to count the boxes before leaving for the aircraft. Halpenny's statement was consistent and seemingly credible. He unlocked the cage, loaded crates onto his truck, collected the mail, returned to find crates still in the truck, and drove to the aircraft, never suspecting the count was wrong. The problem with Halpenny as primary suspect was physics. Moving 6 crates weighing 88 pounds each in under 5 minutes required either multiple people working with mechanical efficiency or foreknowledge that allowed preparation. Investigators found nothing connecting Halpenny to the theft beyond opportunity. No unexplained wealth, no suspicious associates, no gaps in his background, no evidence he knew the shipment was valuable beyond routine cargo. A Globe and Mail article speculated the theft required insider knowledge. Someone familiar with cargo procedures, timing windows, and the value of specific shipments, suggesting current or former airport employees as likely suspects. Police favored a different theory. An external crew who watched the airport's operations identified the vulnerability window and executed a high-speed theft while Halpenny was collecting mail, using the perimeter service road for fast escape. Both theories confronted the same obstacle. Police calculated that moving 6 crates required minimum 2 people, probably 3 or 4, working with a vehicle and loading equipment, all operating on an active airfield without being noticed. Every airport employee who worked that evening was interrogated, their movements documented, their financial situations examined. Investigators built timelines showing who was where during the critical 8 p.m. to 8:30 window. Forensic examination of the steel cage revealed nothing useful. No tool marks indicating forced entry. No unusual fingerprints beyond those of authorized personnel. No physical evidence that anyone had accessed the cage improperly. Investigators sent bulletins to refineries, pawn shops, and precious metal dealers across North America, alerting them to watch for industrial gold bars with specific markings. The assumption being that thieves would need to liquidate quickly. Weeks passed with no credible leads. No gold appeared on the black market. No informants came forward. No sudden unexplained wealth surfaced among airport employees or known criminals in the Toronto area. The gold had vanished as completely as if it never existed. 848 pounds of metallic evidence simply absorbed into the Canadian landscape without trace, without explanation, without a single verifiable sighting. Perhaps more remarkable than the theft itself was the silence that followed. No barroom bragging, no deathbed confessions, no family members discovering hidden wealth years later. Nothing that would typically accompany a crime of this magnitude. This suggested either exceptional discipline among the perpetrators, or elimination of anyone who might talk, or the simplest explanation. Whoever took the gold was never part of the criminal networks police typically monitored. The Malton theft forced immediate changes to cargo security protocols across Canadian aviation. Mandatory counts before and after loading, dual verification systems, sealed containers for high-value shipments, procedures that should have existed from the beginning. TransCanada Airlines faced complex insurance negotiations over who bore responsibility for the loss. The airline argued the theft occurred before cargo reached their custody. Brinks countered the gold was signed for and locked in TCA's facility. The case captured public imagination precisely because it seemed impossible. Gold doesn't simply disappear, yet these specific bars had done exactly that, defying the assumption that something so heavy and distinctive could be successfully hidden. One persistent theory focuses on the near-perfect timing. If thieves knew Halpenny's routine, knew he would leave the truck unattended at 8:03 p.m., they could stage equipment nearby and execute in under 4 minutes. Another theory suggested the gold never reached the cage, that boxes were substituted during the initial handoff from Brinks to TCA, with accomplices creating confusion during the transfer. Though this required Brinks security guards to be either complicit or exceptionally inattentive. A third possibility involved someone with legitimate cage access, an airport employee or contractor who removed boxes gradually over the 3-hour window before Halpenny arrived, replacing them with weighted decoys that would fool a casual glance. All theories confronted the disposal question. Industrial gold bars with specific markings and serial numbers couldn't be sold easily, requiring either melting and recasting, which needed equipment and expertise, or patient waiting until attention faded. Some investigators believed the gold never moved far, that it was buried near Malton immediately after the theft, the thieves understanding that moving it or trying to sell it created exposure, choosing instead to wait years or decades until the investigation cooled. By 1953, active investigation had effectively ceased. Police maintained the case as open but pursued no new leads, having exhausted conventional investigative approaches without identifying viable suspects. 73 years later, no arrests have ever been made in connection with the Malton gold theft. No charges filed, no trials conducted, no convictions secured, making it one of Canada's most successful unsolved heists by any measure. The case represents a statistical anomaly in major theft investigations. Typically, crimes involving multiple perpetrators produce informants, evidence, or mistakes that eventually surface. Yet the Malton theft produced none of these over 7 decades. The Malton theft occurred during a transitional moment in aviation history. Airports were growing from small municipal operations into major transportation hubs. But security thinking remained rooted in the slower, more trusting era of train and ship transport. 1952. Canada operated on assumptions carried over from wartime cooperation and small-town familiarity. Locked doors and signed papers were considered sufficient because most people in the aviation industry knew each other, and theft on this scale was simply unthinkable. Gold moved freely through commercial channels in 1952 because currencies were still backed by gold reserves. Mines produced it. Refineries processed it. Governments stored it. And the entire system depended on secure but relatively open transportation networks. The Malton theft wasn't unprecedented. Gold had been stolen from trains, from armored cars, from refineries, but never before had it vanished so completely from what was supposed to be a controlled aviation facility. 3 decades later, the Brinksmat robbery at Heathrow Airport in 1983 would steal $69 million in gold using similar vulnerability windows. Inside knowledge, timing precision, and the inherent difficulty of securing cargo facilities near active runways. Aviation gold thefts share common elements. They target cargo in transition rather than stored vaults, exploit brief windows when materials move between secure areas, and rely on the assumption that airports are too visible and controlled for major crimes. What makes Malton unusual isn't the theft itself, but the complete absence of resolution. Most airport gold thefts are eventually solved through informants, evidence trails, or perpetrators' inability to successfully dispose of such distinctive merchandise. 73 years later, fundamental questions remain unanswered. How many people participated, whether they had inside help, how they moved the gold, where it went, and whether the perpetrators are even still alive. We know the gold disappeared between 4:46 p.m. when man locked the cage and 10:43 p.m. when the aircraft arrived in Montreal. But within that 6-hour window, the exact moment of theft remains speculation. Whether thieves accessed the cage with duplicate keys, intercepted the cargo during truck loading, or used some other method entirely cannot be determined from available evidence. Each theory has supporting logic and insurmountable problems, Howard Halpney lived the rest of his life under a cloud of suspicion he could neither disprove nor escape. Police never charged him, but never fully cleared him either, leaving his involvement as one more unanswerable element. Industrial gold bars don't simply vanish. They're either melted and recast, destroying identifying marks, or they're buried and waiting, or they were somehow legitimized through black market channels, sophisticated enough to avoid detection. The most puzzling element remains the absolute silence. In 7 decades, not one credible lead has emerged suggesting either extraordinary discipline, very few perpetrators, or elimination of anyone who might talk. Modern airport cargo security would make the Malton theft nearly impossible. CCTV coverage, GPS tracking on vehicles, biometric access controls, real-time inventory systems, multiple redundant verification procedures. Each security improvement in aviation cargo handling can be traced to a specific failure. Malton taught the industry that trust and paperwork were insufficient, that physical assets require constant visual verification and controlled access. Modern investigative tools that might have solved Malton didn't exist in 1952. No DNA analysis, no digital forensics, no satellite tracking, no databases that could cross-reference suspects and patterns across jurisdictions. A Malton-style theft attempted today would generate immediate digital traces. Security camera footage, vehicle GPS data, electronic access logs, cell phone records, financial transaction monitoring, creating dozens of investigative threads. Whoever pulled off the Malton theft possessed unusual psychological characteristics. The patience to wait years before spending proceeds, the discipline to avoid bragging, the nerve to execute under pressure, and the foresight to plan for long-term concealment. Someone lived with this secret, possibly for decades, waking each morning knowing they'd committed Canada's perfect crime, watching the investigation fade, carefully maintaining normal appearances while sitting on a fortune. If the perpetrators are dead, as seems likely given 7 decades have passed, they took their knowledge to the grave. No last-minute conscience, no desire for recognition, just silence extending beyond life itself. The Malton gold theft surfaces periodically in Canadian media, usually when another major heist occurs and journalists search for historical context. It remains the standard by which unsolved thefts are measured. Around Mississauga, the region that absorbed Old Malton, older residents still discuss the theft as local legend. The time someone outsmarted the system, got away clean, and left nothing but questions. Somewhere, those specific gold bars still exist. Gold doesn't decay, doesn't disappear, doesn't lose its elemental properties, meaning the physical evidence of this crime persists even if its location and ownership remain mysteries. Theoretically, the gold could still be found. Construction crews digging foundations, farmers ploughing fields, metal detector enthusiasts exploring. Any of these might uncover wooden crates that would suddenly make sense of a 73-year mystery. More likely, the gold was melted within days of the theft, recast into unmarked bars or smaller pieces, the distinctive serial numbers destroyed, the trail permanently cold, efficient, final, and impossible to trace 7 decades later. Or someone waited, understanding that gold appreciates and time erases risk, sold gradually over decades through legitimate dealers as the investigation faded and new ownership became impossible to challenge. A final possibility is the simplest. Amateurs who got extraordinarily lucky took advantage of a visible opportunity and succeeded not through sophisticated planning, but through the system's complete lack of redundant safeguards. September 24th, 1952. 10:43 p.m. A Trans-Canada Airlines cargo plane sits on the tarmac in Montreal. The manifest says 10 boxes. The hold contains 4. Someone knows what happened in those hours between 4:46 p.m. and 8:33 p.m., or knew, and took that knowledge to the grave, leaving only the absence where 848 pounds of gold used to be. The perfect crime isn't the one that's never attempted. It's the one that's never solved. Malton, 1952. Still perfect. Still unsolved. Somewhere in Canada, possibly within miles of where Pearson International Airport now stands, 6 wooden crates might still be waiting. Or the gold was spent decades ago by people who died without ever telling anyone what they did. And that's where we'll leave it. Thanks for listening and diving into this incredible story. If you enjoyed this story and want more documentaries like this, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And see you in the next one.